This 165,000 square foot warehouse is piled high with liquidated goods, including the never-ending stream of things we've all been returning. Liquidation company Quick Lots estimates that about 30% of the products it receives are clearly used returns.
A little charger watch. This is like a very expensive Swiss watch. Of course, underwear.
Customer returns are skyrocketing, filling landfills and warehouses like this one to the brim.
About like this, we estimate to be about $20,000, $30,000 in retail value.
So how did it all get here? And how are retailers feeling the impact of an increasing number of unwanted goods? When that pair of pants you bought online doesn't fit quite right, the solution is easy. Return it and get a refund. But after you mail them back, where those pants end up is a bit more complicated.
The best of all possible answers is that the good gets repackaged and goes back on the shelf, so it's ready for sale as a new item.
But getting there is costly. Reverse logistics company Optoro estimates that on average, it costs 66% of the price of an item to process its return. For example, if those pants you returned were $50, it would cost the retailer $33 to take them back. So, many returns travel through a complicated web of warehouses, secondary resellers, and landfills. First up is a returns processing center, where the item gets inspected for damage. Every company has a different set of standards for what can be repackaged and sold again. And plenty of things don't meet them. Optoro says that many retailers threw away over a quarter of returned goods in 2019. The amount of returns and excess inventory that retailers send to landfills has more than doubled since 2016, from 4 billion pounds to 9.6 billion pounds. But everything else is harder to track. The rest of the unwanted goods filter through our secondary resale market, including retailer outlets and online auctions. One path leads to liquidation companies like Quick Lots.
Retailers, their business is to retail. Their business is not to deal with rejected inventory. They figure out how to just streamline the process by liquidating.
Companies like Nordstrom, Target, and Best Buy send products by the truckful. Those trucks are filled with pallets of both customer returns and excess inventory, or items that never sold in the first place.
Everything comes bundled together as liquidation. And a lot of times, even merchandise that are brand new, they could have been returns, but they're hard to identify because they got returned with tags in a brand new condition.
The company sells pallets wholesale, but it also sorts through items by category and condition. Its clients are other resellers, from people listing on marketplaces like eBay or Poshmark to mom-and-pop discount stores to flea market stands. And now, companies are dealing with even more returns. According to the National Retail Federation, customer returns across the retail industry are growing. As e-commerce sales explode, online returns do too. They've more than doubled in the past few years, from 9.6% in 2019 to 20.8% in 2021.
So when we shop at a store, we see, feel, smell, we know what we're getting. When we shop online, we don't have that sensation. And so we end up buying more items so that we can see, feel, smell, touch them.
Retailers themselves have made it easier, with long return windows and free shipping.
Those policies that especially Amazon created years ago has increased that convenience to the customer. And because one retailer started, everybody has to follow suit.
Amling says retailers would rather eat the cost of returns than disappoint customers. But at the end of the day, returns still affect consumers.
Those costs go into the price that they charge for items. And ultimately, that cost is borne by us.
For retailers overwhelmed with returned goods, offloading them to liquidators can be a relief.
It's a painful process, and they just want to get rid of it. They just want someone else to do it.
And it can be a way to recoup some loss. Amling says if retailers think that those goods will end up in a landfill, selling them to liquidators instead can be an appealing choice. Still, returns eat into the bottom line.
Retail isn't a high-margin business, and a large part of that are all of the costs that go in to things like returns. That is actively cutting in to the margins that retailers make.
But it's tricky to track the actual cost.
The responsibility is diffused among different groups within the organization. too many companies are not measuring the cost that they're spending on reverse logistics.
As returns increase, some retailers are changing their policies, but it's not widespread.
Companies that are selling goods that can be found on other websites are going to find it much more difficult because if I can find the same product somewhere else and it's free returns, that's where I'm going.
But despite making small shifts, Amling says retailers aren't prioritizing dealing with returned items.
Right now, consumers have no idea what happens to a return once they, let's say, drop it off at a UPS store. Once that becomes transparent, they will change.